Dear students, I am Santan, working as a physics faculty in Target English Medium School. Today, in this part video from the chapter of friction, I would like to teach what are the methods we are used to increase the frictional force, and also what are the methods we are used to decrease the frictional force. These two topics we discussed in this part video from the chapter of friction. So in our previous video we clearly discussing about what is the relation between frictional force and area of contact. So finally we are proved that and we are conclude that frictional force is independent on the area of contact. Is nothing but frictional force is not depend on the area of contact, but frictional force is depend on the microscopic area of contact. That is yesterday I will be proved with the help of the two diagrams very clearly. Now in this one we discuss about that what are the methods to increase the friction and what are the methods we are used to decrease the friction. First we discussed what are the methods are used to increase the frictional force. Methods used to increase friction. So what are the methods we are used to increase the friction? Means mainly two types of methods we are used to increase the frictional force. The first one is by making the surface of the object rough, and the second one is by increasing the mass of the object. So listen very carefully. So how many methods we are used to increase the frictional force? Mainly we are used two methods to increase the frictional force. The first one is by making the surface of the objects rough. Second one by increasing the mass of the object. So already the first one we discussed very clearly in the concept of how the frictional force is dependent on the normal force. Means in what way we are increase the frictional force by increasing the mass of the object. Means we know that. So here what will be happen if we can place a brick on the surface of the table? Its brick mass is 1 kg. That's why on the brick how much gravitational force is acting? I said clearly the Newton scientists will be find out when we can hold 1 kilogram weight mass of a body in your palm, you feel 9.8 Newton force is acting by the earth gravity. That's right. So it's nothing but on 1 kg mass of a body, how much gravitational force is acting? 9.8 Newton. So that's why the same amount of force is also acting in which direction? Vertically upward. This is called normal force. Now we can increase the mass of the object. Means initially we can take 1 kg, next you can take the 2 kg. 2 kg means on every 1 kg mass of your body, how much one is acting? 9.8. For understanding of you, simply you can set that 10 Newton. Okay. So in 2 kg body, 1 kg 10 Newton, 2 kg 20 Newton. That's why. So if gravitational force is increases, automatically normal force is also increases by the rigid surface. Otherwise, if gravitational force is increased but the normal force is not increased on the body by the surface of the table or surface of the other body, what will be happen? The body will be moves towards the means passing through the table and fall onto the ground. But it is not possible. So that's why when the mass is increases, automatically weight of the body is increases, then normal force is also increases. If normal force is increases, frictional force is also increased. Already we discussed that. Frictional force is directly proportional to the normal force. Normal force is increased, frictional force is also increased. Normal force is decreased, frictional force is also decreased. That's why if the mass of the object is increases, then frictional force is also normal force is also increases, then automatically frictional force is also increases. That's why, so by increasing the mass of the object, what you can do? Increase the frictional force in the way of normal force. And what is the first one? By making the surfaces of the object rough. This is the one main. It means what is the meaning of this one? Means so the surface of the objects we made into the rough, then automatically frictional force is also increases, because of I said in the starting of the chapter what are the main causes for the frictional force. Means every surface of a body will have elevation and depression. This is called irregular pattern. So if a body has the more rough, it has the more irregular pattern, is nothing but more elevations and depression. That's why the roughness of the body will have more frictional force. So like that one, if the surface of the objects we made into the rough, it will automatically increase the frictional force. Under this we discussed 4 examples. First one is the tires of vehicles. The tires of vehicles treads is nothing but the designs that can see on the surface of tire. Listen very carefully. The tires of vehicle streets. What is the meaning of that one? Means you are observing that if you can observe the bike tires, bicycle tires, and a lorry or a truck or bus tires. So their pattern means this. On the surface of the vehicle tires, you are observing different patterns are there. That pattern we are called treads. So the tires of vehicle treads is nothing but the designs that can see on the surface of the tire is called treads. So why they are using the different pattern of that one? Means due to the different pattern, the pattern you are observing that so some space is there between the two. Space is represented depression, remaining one elevation. That's why elevations and depression, elevation, depression. The elevation and depressions are causes for which one? Frictional force. That's why if the tire we can make into the different pattern of design, then what will be happen? It is increase the frictional force between the tire and the road. The tires of vehicle streets to increase the frictional force between the tire and road. So we know that when a car or a bus or any vehicle is moving on the road, the vehicle tire is rolling on the ground. That's right. The vehicle tire is in contact with the road surface of the road. That's right. So by making the vehicle's tires into the different designs, then what will be happen? Due to their contact force, so what will be happen? Their frictional force is increases. That's right. So you are observing that. Okay. So mostly for the premium bikes is nothing but mostly racer bikes are there. For the racer bikes, the pattern of the tires are different when compared to the regular using the bikes. Because of the regular using bikes tires, when you are moving with 60 or 70 kilometers per hour only, at that time suddenly you are able to apply the brakes, mostly it will be slippery and you fall down. But in case of racer bikes, the bikes are moved with 150 kilometers per hour or 200 kilometers per hour also. When you can apply the sudden brakes also in the same position, they will become to the rest without slippery. What is the difference? That means the patterns of the tires are different from the regular using bikes and the sports bikes. That's why. So the patterns are helped to the patterns is nothing but the patterns are increase the frictional force between the tire and the road, then automatically so there comes to the rest within the short period of time without slippery. That is the one. Under this one only, the B, by making the surfaces rough. A we discuss that B1. So what is the second one? Means the soles of shoes have grooved to increase frictional force. Soles is nothing but the bottom of the shoes or the bottom of the slippers. You are observing that. So the bottom of the shoes or the bottom of the slippers, you are observing they have some special design pattern is there, that is called groove. In case of tires, the special pattern we are called threads. Okay, so in case of shoes or slippers, the special pattern you are observed under the bottom of the shoes or slippers, that is called groove. So why the grooves are The sole of the shoes have the groove means to increase the which one? Frictional force only. Like the same way, the third one, the sportsman shoes have spikes at the bottom of the shoes to increase the frictional force. To increase the frictional force. So here we are observing that mostly are observing in case of sportsman means in the running. Okay, so they have spikes at the front of the shoes means bottom of the shoes at the front. Okay, so means it is the shoe, we can say that just okay. Here it is a shoe means it is the red part, it is the front one. At the front you are observing that some spikes are there like this, items like this one. What is the use of this one means the spikes will be helps to them to increase the frictional force, because of when they run fastly without slippery, that is first purpose. Because of the spikes will be goes inside the ground, then will be gives the more frictional force to the person without slippery. And also when they run fastly and try to stop suddenly, at that time what will be happen? If the sports shoes does not have the spikes, then what will be happen? The person will be slippery and fall down. Maybe he was injured. He may be injured. That's why to avoid the injury of the sportsman shoes will be have which one spikes along with the groove. That's why it is increase the better friction without slippery. Next one, gymnasts apply a coarse substance on their hand for better grip before doing any performance on the bar. You are observing that the gymnast will be do different performances on the bars, iron bars at certain height. That's why generally when you are doing that activity, what will be happen? So the sweat will be comes on our palm, then it will be makes the slippery, then you can fall down. Okay, during the performance. That's why the gymnast will be applied before perform that activity. They apply a coarse substance, a powder-like substances. It is a coarse is nothing but rough substances. Then what will be happen? It will be increase the better grip between the iron bar and their hands. That's why without slippery they will be do that their activity without any fearless. That's why, so these are the main methods to increase the frictional force by making the surfaces into the rough. Listen very carefully. How many methods we are used to increase the frictional force means mainly we are used two methods to increase the frictional force. First one is by making the surfaces of the object rough. Second one by increase the mass of the object. By making the surface of the object rough, under that four examples I will explain. The first one is the tires of the vehicles are treated treats nothing but the tires of the vehicles are specially designed for increase the frictional force. Like the same way, second one, the soles of shoes have grooved to increase the frictional force. The sportsman shoes have spikes at the bottom to increase the frictional force. Gymnasts apply a coarse substance on their hand for better grip before doing or before performance their activity on the bars. And the second one also I told, by increase the frictional, by increase the mass of the object. For that one, in the starting of the video only I clearly explained. If mass of the object is increases, gravitational force acting on the body is also increases. If the gravitational force acting on the body increases, automatically normal force is also increases. If normal force is increases, frictional force is also increases, because of frictional force is depend on the normal force. Is nothing but simply frictional force is directly proportional to the normal force. Normal force increase, frictional force is also increase. Normal force is decrease, frictional force is also decrease. That's why by increasing the mass of the object we can increase the normal force, then automatically frictional force is also increases. That's why the two methods we are used to increase the frictional force. Next, The second one is, what are the methods we are used to decrease the frictional force? Methods or ways to decrease the frictional force or friction. So mainly here 4 methods are there. Means mainly we are using 4 methods to decrease the frictional force. The first one is use ball bearings. Second one, by polishing. Third one, use lubricants. Fourth one, by streamlining. These 4 methods we are used to decrease the which force? Frictional force. What is the first one? Use ball bearings. Second one, by polishing. Third one, use lubricants. And fourth one, by streamlining. So how we can reduce the frictional force by using these methods? We discussed step by step about the first one. It is very important for the 2 marks. What are the methods we are used to decrease the frictional force? Means you can write the 4 names. Mainly we are using 4 methods to reduce the frictional force. Afterwards you can write these 4 names. If the same question they are asking for the 4 marks, you can explain each category separately. How we can reduce the frictional force? By using the ball bearings. In between the machinery parts and the shafts, we use the ball bearings to reduce the frictional force, because of when we are use the ball bearings between the 2 machinery parts, the sliding friction will be converted into the rolling friction. Rolling friction is always lesser than the sliding friction. That's why. So we are use the ball bearings. So for example, in case of you are observing that, okay, so in the machinery parts of a fan, or in case of the wheels, okay, at the rear wheel of the bicycle, or in case of which one? Scooters, whatever the other one is also. You are observing that in the rear wheel of the bicycle, in the fans, okay, means in most of the cases in the rotating objects. So between the 2 parts, what is there? What is we are using? Ball bearings. Generally we know that if you are not using any ball bearings, one object will be placed on the another object, then what will be happen? So these 2 are direct physical contact is there. So that's why the upper body will be try to move, then what will be happen? Due to the frictional force, okay, so it is not easily to rotate easily. But between the 2 parts, we place any spherical objects, spherical metallic objects, that is the ball bearings. Then what will be happen? They can move very freely. For example, just for understanding of you, it is one object, it is the another object in the machinery parts. It is the upper part of the machinery parts, it is the lower part of the machinery parts. Initially, both are keep in contact with each other physically. So the upper one you can try to rotate. It is easy, but somewhat means you apply some force. But between these two one, what will be happen means we are using, okay. So this piece of chalk pieces we can say as a ball bearings. Between these two one, we keep like this one. You are observing that what will be happen. So means simply, for I says that. So initially I will keep this book on this one. If you can try to push this one, you are observing that just I will push this book. It will be displaced a little bit distance only. Why it is displaced little bit distance between these two? Which frictional force is there? Sliding frictional force. Now between these two, I will be placed two piece of charts. This piece of charts will be, we can say as a ball bearings, but in the rotating parts for understand. Now here, so after I placing these two one at different distances, you are observing that just I will apply little bit force. It is covered more distance when compared to the initial. So means in the first case and second case, I will apply the same force on the upper part of upper book. But in the first case, the sliding friction is more than the rolling friction. It's nothing but simply the rolling friction is lesser than the sliding friction. Due to that one, between the two machinery parts, when you are using the metallic shape of the spherical balls, metallic spherical shape. So spherical shape of the metallic part, this spherical shape of the metallic parts will be convert the sliding friction into the rolling friction. That's why the machinery parts can easily rotated, or shafts will be easily rotated. That is one of the methods. How we can write means in between machinery parts and shafts, we are using spherical shape of the metallic balls. This spherical shape of the metallic balls will be convert sliding friction into the rolling friction. And we know that rolling friction is always lesser than the sliding friction. And second one is by polishing. You are observing that some of the surface of the tables or some of the surface of the objects will be very rough. Rough is nothing but if roughness is increases, frictional force is also increases, because of roughness of the body will be have more elevations and depression. Is nothing but more irregular pattern. That's why its frictional force is more. Now the surface of that type of objects we can polish up to some extent. Then what will happen? If elevations and depressions are, we can polish it, so their height or peaks is decreases. Is nothing but roughness is decreases. If the roughness will be decreases, then frictional force is also decreases. That's why. So what we can write here for this one means the surface of the objects we can do polishing up to some extent. We can reduce the frictional force. Next, third one is use lubricants. Lubricants is nothing but oil and greases. Oil and greases we are called as lubricants. Oil we are used between the machinery parts. Some of the times you are observing that when you are using a bicycle, so after using some of the days between the chain and rail wheel, you apply the which one? Oil. So by using that oil, what will be happen? The chain can easily rotate it on the wheel. That's why the bicycle will be moving fastly without making any noise. Like the same way, we are using in the bikes also like that type of one. And the greases means it is used for the lorry, truck, buses. Because of if you use the oil, in that cases also we are using. But the oil, density or thickness is very less. It's nothing but simply viscosity. So that's why it will be quickly heated and it will be drier. That's why. But the grease cannot be drier easily. It will be fixed between the two parts after some long time also. That's why. So oil and greases are called lubricants. Simply listen very carefully. Oil and greases are called lubricants. These lubricants are used between the contact surface of the two parts. Then this oil or greases will be fill the irregularities. Is nothing but mainly depressions. You are observing that like this one. It is called elevation. It is called depression. When we can okay, pour the oil or greases on the surface of between the two bodies. Means two bodies are in contact. Between these two bodies, means here this is one body, this is another body. On this surface of the body, we pour the oil or fill the grease. Then what will be happen? This oil and grease will be settled there on the depressions. That's why this total part will be covered by the oil and greases. Then what will be happen? The depression will be automatically reduces. Then only the elevation is there. That's why the body can easily move on that one. So use lubricant means lubricants is nothing but oil and greases. Oil and greases are called lubricants. These lubricants are used between the two machinery parts of they are in contact. They reduce the frictional force by form a tiny layer between the two parts. Next one is by streamlining. So in the streamlining, two cases are there. By streamlining, the first one is cars, aeroplanes and bullet trains. Cars, aeroplanes and bullet trains are specially designed. There you are observing that the shape of the some of the sports cars, aeroplanes and bullet trains, their shapes are specially designed. The special design we are called streamline. Listen very carefully. So the shapes of the car, aeroplanes and bullet trains are specially designed. This is called streamlined. What we are called? Streamlined. Streamlined. So why the shapes are having specially designed means, so you know that in case of a sports car, the speed of the sports car is 300 to 350 kilometers per hour. The bullet train, you are observing that in the nowadays 350 to 500 kilometers per hour. And aeroplanes are, the minimum is 600 kilometers per hour and maximum is 1200 kilometers per hour. Means how they can travel that much of a means, that much of speed means, you know that when an object will be moving in the air, so air frictional force is acting on the bodies in opposite direction of its motion. That's why, so they move, they achieve that much of speed means must and should. If their surfaces or the shapes are in the ordinary mode, what will be happen? More air frictional force is acting. That's why their speeds will be not reaches to the that particular level. That's why the aeroplane, car and bullet trains are achieve that much of speed. Then what will be happen to reduce the frictional force acting on it? That's why their shapes are specially designed to reduce the air frictional force is acting on them. So, right, the cars, aeroplanes and the bullet trains shapes are specially designed or called streamlined to reduce the air frictional force act on it. Like the same way, similarly, boats and ships, we are observing that. Boats and ships shape is also we are observing that in the front portion and back portion they are mainly in the front portion, so it is very narrow is there like this one. Means so like this part. So means here you are observing that in the front portion it is very narrow. After that the width is increases gradually. So means here, so why the boats and the ships have the specially design, the special design we are calling which one? Streamline. Why that streamline means to decrease the water frictional force is acting on it. Listen very carefully. So cars, aeroplanes, bullet trains are traveling in the air. Is nothing but bullet trains, cars are travel on the road, but they so in the surrounding what is the air frictional force is acting when the cars and bullet trains are travel, but aeroplanes are travel in the air only. Anyway, so the cars, aeroplanes, bullet trains are specially designed, that is called streamline, because of to reduce the air frictional force is acting on it to achieve that particular speed. Next one, boats and ships are specially designed, they are traveling in the water. When they travel in the water, what will be also exert some friction or force on the boats and ships in the opposite direction. That is called frictional force exerted by the water or fluid friction. That's right. So the boats and ships also specially designed. They are called streamlined. Simply you can write. Similarly, boats and ships are streamlined to reduce the water friction force is acting on it, or drag friction force. So, what are the methods are used to decrease the frictional force? Mainly 4 methods. Use ball bearings by polishing, use lubricants by streamlining.